Well, I'm finally at this one.
The Legend of Zelda the Wind Waker. I remember when this game was announced. I remember the backlash that ensued. But before we cover the game, let's go over some history. When Nintendo was first showing off the GameCube, there was a simple demo release that showed Link and Ganondorf and their Ocarina of Time incarnations going at it in a full-on sword fight. Obviously, the game was never intended to be a game in development, but merely a tech demo of what the upcoming GameCube was capable of. But it did its job and got fans hooked. People couldn't wait to see what the new Zelda would look like. A year later, Nintendo would fill that wish. But what they got wasn't exactly what they expected. Yeah, people's jaws dropped, whether it be in shock or in disgust. It was derided as Zelda, and people thought Nintendo had embraced the kiddie image that had haunted them so much. Zelda was now seen as a laughingstock among the gaming community. Not wanting the backlash to affect what he saw as a great game, Miyamoto refused to show more of the game until a demo was available, and when it was released, people came around to it. There was a certain amount of hype for the first Zelda on GameCube. Ocarina of Time's shadow still hung over the series. You can't deny the impact that game had on the landscape of gaming, and continues to do so to this day. Not only that, but as I mentioned, its story was groundbreaking and the narrative still holds up today. I'm playing this game off the HD remaster for the Wii U. Honestly though, where's the Switch port for this Nintendo? What's taking you so long? You see, the original plan for Ocarina of Time was that it was the imprisoning warp backstory that was mentioned in A Link to the Past, but they realized they screwed that up by having Ganon with one piece of the Triforce when he is supposed to have the whole Triforce. But the ending also left a bit of a conundrum. You see, the future Link fought to save was now free while Link returned to his childhood 7 years earlier, which led into Majora's Mask. But what happened in Ocarina of Time after Ganondorf was sealed away? Well, that's what the opening of the Wind Waker tells. For generations, the Hero of Time story has been told and has become legend. But one day, hundreds of years later, the Dark Force broke out of the seal. Remember, Ganondorf did swear to get out and destroy their descendants, and he clearly made good on that promise. Also, fun fact, one thing I remember on the internet before this game came out was whether or not there had been multiple links or if there was only one link. This game pretty much put a definite end to that debate. The Flame Wars were glorious. I guess nothing's changed. The opening really sets the mood of, oh dear, what happened to Hyrule? The opening narration doesn't really give an answer, instead saying that the people prayed the Hero of Time would appear again to save them. But as time moved on, the memory of the kingdom has vanished. But it has become tradition for boys to wear green when they become the age of men. Which leads me into our opening on Outset Island. We see Ariel... How do you pronounce that? This is why these games should have voice acting. Who is Link's younger sister. They live with their grandmother on Outset Island. Because Link must never have parents for some reason. He is allowed to have any other relative, but never parents. While Zelda is only ever allowed to have a father if she has a relative, but that's another story. Today is Link's birthday, and to mark the occasion he has to go to the house to pick up his new clothes. So Link controls the same as he did in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. What the game encourages you to do is explore the island. Meet the townspeople, including this kid who really needs a tissue. New additions is that Link can now crawl on his knees, which is a nice addition as it allows for sneaking up on things or through tight corridors. You can talk to the townspeople, such as the two brothers. One is a scholar, while the other is trained in the way of the sword. Now, let's go get the clothes. One thing that immediately sticks out to me is the graphics really allow Link a range of expressions that he couldn't previously. In Ocarina of Time, the only expression he was able to have was shock. But when he first gets the clothes, you can tell that he's disappointed. So instead of having cuckoos in this game, we have pigs. People keep pigs for pets. I guess that's not entirely inaccurate to real life. So you get back to Ariel. She gives Link the telescope, which is a new item for the game, and it's an appropriate one considering that you live in the ocean. So it seems to be a normal day. Oh, wait a minute, did Ariel change clothes or something? She went from wearing red to blue. Or was that a screw-up? It happens multiple times throughout the game. Anyway, back on topic, a giant bird is carrying a girl and being chased by a pirate ship. The pirate ship manages to get the bird to drop the girl into the forest, although how she survived that falls beyond my understanding. So Link has to get a sword from Orca. What follows is a training sequence. The combat for the sword is largely unchanged from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, but is expanded. Link can now do a parry maneuver that will allow Link to get behind the opponent and attack from behind. It's a useful maneuver that comes into play later on throughout the game. So Link heads into the woods. This bridge will be conveniently destroyed later in the game, so you get introduced to the first enemies of the game. It's meant to ease you into the combat mechanics, but the girl whose name is Tetra is found. She pays no mind to the boy who rescued her, as her pirate group comes to her aid. But Link decides to follow them out where he meets his sister, but not sure what he thought that was going to do, but points for trying. So the postman, Quill, or Rito, who are descendants of Zoras for some reason, I'll get into that later. Anyway, he convinces Tetra to let Link come with him to go to the Forsaken Fortress. Before that, we have to get the shield, and a tender scene follows. Link departs his childhood home, and it's a nice moment as it allows Link to be human. On the ship where we meet Tetra's pirates, Gonzo, Zuko, Nico, Mako. Wow, I think the last three predate their more famous counterparts. The game with Nico was designed to teach you how to swing from ropes. A new mechanic for this game, and one that I think the series has been long overdue for. So you arrive at the Forsaken Fortress, aptly named I might add, but how are you going to sneak inside? Well, Tetra figures out a solution. Well, that's, original. I'll give it that. Unfortunately, since Link lost his sword, he must take a cue from Solid Snake and sneak around. It's an interesting idea. Zelda is primarily used to sword combat, and taking that away seems like a good idea to force the player to sneak around and get used to the non-sword mechanics of the game. It's also recommended you take out the lighthouses, otherwise you will be spotted. This introduces this game's new feature, letting you pick up weapons. It's really useful for here when you are disarmed. Also, using barrels to hide is really funny. It's just like the cardboard box from Metal Gear Solid. The minions are so stupid that they are none the wiser. This game also introduces the idea to sidle across tight passageways, which is a nice way to add some variety to the gameplay. So finally getting to the top and getting your sword back will trigger a mini-boss fight of sorts. I always love how Link jumps up and down whenever something good happens. Gives him personality. Link arrives to rescue his sister and the other two kidnapped girls, but that giant bird catches him and takes him to his master. Wonder who that could be. Link is found and rescued by the King of Red Lions, who is a talking boat. You know, the last 3D Zelda game had aliens. I don't think a talking boat is out of the realm of possibility. Basically, our friend here tells Link that Ganon has returned. For Link to rescue his sister, he must find a trinket that will be able to defeat Ganon. However, we cannot depart just yet, because the King of Red Lions has no sail, despite the fact that he was able to take Link to this island. So, yeah, I guess you just made that stipulation up. So that introduces us to Windfall Island. Windfall Island's like the mainstay side quest area, your safe haven if you will. The locals are interesting to talk to. It has a bomb shop and 10,000 rupees. You're seriously joking. Screw you, man. Then there's this guy who comes up begging for you to save his daughter. One of the kids in the cage. Interesting. Then you get to bust Tingle out of prison. Why? I really don't want to. Of course you have to for very specific reasons. Why was he in there? I wonder. Basically, Windfall Island serves as a way for you to grow accustomed to Wind Waker's world. You have this guy who's doing an honest to good job entertaining the masses even if his battleship minigame is based entirely on luck, or this rich guy who just wants his daughter back. And you can get the camera much earlier in this version. More on that later, but whatever the case, you finally buy the sail and take it to the King of Red Lions, and now it's time to focus on the Wind Waker's main part, sailing. One thing the HD version did was map the sail to its own unique button, so you didn't have to select and deselect it from the start menu, which was a good change. The ocean serves as a way to load the other islands while you're traveling to them, so you don't have to do load screens, which a lot of games had to do back then. There's nothing like sailing with the wind at your back and the seagulls flying alongside you. Since Ariel is close to the seagulls, I like to say that it symbolizes that she's still with Link even if she's far away. It's pretty straightforward, but the next destination is Dragon Roast Island. The music is pretty top-notch at this part. The island is home to the Ritos, who are descendants from the Zoros, which doesn't even begin to make sense. How do fish people evolve into bird people? Anyway, the King of Red Lions gives you the Wind Waker, which effectively serves as this game's ocarina. Every 3D Zelda game had to have an instrument of some kind. Link must visit the Great Valoo, who is a giant dragon. World building, how nice. So the Ritos serve as the mailmen of the Great Sea, and playing this stupid letter minigame is so annoying, but it's a good way to earn rupees. After speaking with the chief, he asks you to help his son Kamali, who is to speak to the Great Valoo and become a flyer, a rite of passage for Ritos. But the Great Valoo has grown restless. It's all set up for the first major dungeon in the game. You speak to Medley, who has gone on to be quite the fan favorite among Zelda fans. This sequence here is a segment that's designed to teach you how to use the wind to your advantage. Of course, you could screw up and send Medley flying into a wall. We'll just say that was your fault and not mine. Well, whatever the case, you go into the first dungeon, Dragon Roast Cavern. It's a standard introductory dungeon. What Wind Waker has is these spoiled goods that make for interesting purposes in side quests. The dungeon makes use of the lava-type floors, such as having to use water to create platforms, which is an interesting way to traverse. Also, sometimes enemies can come flying out of pots, which is an interesting surprise. Dragon Roast Cavern is also home to interesting surprises when you have to go outside to climb up to another part of the dungeon. It adds to the scenery of the dungeon, but the main purpose of the journey is to find Medley at the top of the dungeon locked up by moblins. Of course she got herself captured, but it's always up to Link to save the day. But she gives Link the grappling hook, which is a new item, and one that I like a lot, as it helps make Link feel more like an adventurer. Eat your heart out, Nathan Drake, how come you never carry one? So it's finally time to confront the boss. Goma. No boss subtitles this time? Apparently Wind Waker had a very rushed production, so I imagine boss subtitles were cut to save time. More on that as we go. Goma has a shell this time, and it means having to cruelly abuse Valoo's tail to get a piece of debris to fall on Goma, and this break the shell. Like before, it's use the item you got to defeat the boss, rinse and repeat. But I just love how Link dances whenever he beats a boss. So the day is saved on this island for now. Link gets Din's Pearl, Prince Kamali decides that he wants to stop being a coward and grow up. From here, Link learns how to control the wind, obviously this game's gimmick. It serves the purpose of directing the wind of where you want to go when you're on the boat, but it got really carried away in the original GameCube version. Anyway, your sea map is empty. That's why you gotta throw bait down around these fishermen to fill up your sea chart. It's a fairly simple to the point way of filling out your map. I took the time to get them all filled out, and the results are that it becomes easier to see where you're going when you're trying to get to a treasure. Next up we go to the Forest Haven, which is where the great Dooku tree, who looks a little different than the last time we saw him. I'm going to assume this is the same Sprout from Ocarina of Time all grown up. You rescue him from some Clucus. The great Dooku tree mistakes Link for the hero of time according to the translation. He acknowledges the gravity of the situation because Ganon has returned. And the Kokiri have evolved into Koraks. Somehow. They're doing a ceremony to spread the forest throughout the Great Sea, but Maykar has gone missing. So the Dooku tree grants Link the Dooku Leaf, which is a prototype of the paraglider from Breath of the Wild. That's one way to look at it. Outside approaching the Forbidden Woods, the Ballad of the Wind Song serves as a secondary purpose as you need to control the wind so the leaf can carry you all the way. Now it's time to enter the Forbidden Woods. It's a dungeon that relies mostly on forest scenery. Mainly it's an elevation type of platform, such as using these flower buds to elevate yourself, much in the same way that the Dooku pads worked in Majora's Mask. The Dooku Leaf gets a lot of mileage in this dungeon, which makes sense as it is your most recently acquired item, such as using it to get to a platform across the stage, then finding the mini-boss Mafula. It's not a particularly difficult boss. You get rid of the boss and you get the boomerang, which is a pretty standard item in Zelda at this point. It works the same way as it did in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The boomerang is again good for picking up enemies that you really don't want to be fighting. Using the boomerang and Duke Leaf in combination is rather good. Finally, that leaves us with the boss battle, Kala Demos. I had to look that up because there are no boss subtitles. It eats Maykar and so Link must do battle. The first part of it brings back memories of fighting the boss in Jabu Jabu's belly, using the boomerang to hit the tentacles at the top. At least it has the courtesy to spit Link out after he slashes it with its sword. So rinse and repeat, the boss is down and Maykar is rescued. This will surely not become a trend. So Link takes Maykar back to the Dooku tree and the ceremony is held. Now, just don't go and make a very long and tedious side quest with a bad reward in a future game. That's all I ask. For Wars Pair is acquired, and thus on we go. Before we go, let's open the Nintendo Gallery and talk about it real quick. The Nintendo Gallery is a game in and of itself. With your camera, Link can take pictures of every character in the game. Then you go to this guy, Carl, and he will make them into figurines. Fortunately, the camera tells you when the shot is good. I got obsessed with this. I had to complete my collection. It's funny, Nintendo will later make this type of thing into a reality with the Amiibo release a decade after Wind Waker was first released. The Miiverse allowed people to share photos because you could take selfies, but I can't show that off anymore because Nintendo shut down Miiverse in 2017 for whatever reason. It was a good way to get pictures that were otherwise hard to get. Before heading to the next area, I decided to explore the sea. The sea is home to many secrets. Each island has a treasure or is plot relevant. Or it's home to these big octos that you have to fight. How wonderful. Or you can find great fairies which increase your supplies very quickly, I might add. The world is big, and yet you get the feeling that it's housing a secret that you're unaware of. This is also the first appearance of Beetle, who sells things by the ocean side. It's charming in a way. The game oozes charm in its presentation. Then there's parts where you have to play golf on the ocean floor. How nice. Then there's times where you have to control seagulls. Not sure how that works. Maybe one of them is Marin! So it's time to go to Great Fish Isle. But it's destroyed. Obviously Ganon seems to have gotten wind of what's going on, and Jalban has fled. He has gone to Outset Island. But in order to get there, Link must first visit the pirates on Windfall Island. You need bombs to be able to get inside. Of course, why Link doesn't just carry bombs on him is beyond my understanding. So, sneaking inside the bomb shop, Tetra and the pirates have tied up the frugal bomb shop owner and are stealing the bombs. This scene mainly serves to characterize Tetra as not being completely heartless when she catches a sight of Link and decides to let him go first. Now, I could free the bomb shop owner, but why should I? Moving on. So next you get to infiltrate the pirate ship, but before we go to see Nico, let's look at Tetra's room. You see that picture on the wall? That's foreshadowing right there. The next challenge is to get across without using the platforms. Of course, it's not that difficult. It's designed to teach you how to do so in the future. Link gets the bombs, but Tetra says that Link has until Dayfall to get to Outset. Okay, sure. So once you get to Outset, the King of Red Lions tells you that morning has not come, obviously intended to be a hint that Ganon's causing some kind of curse. But it never really goes anywhere, it's more of a plot device. But first, time to go see your grandma. Oh. Let's just say you don't have a heart if you don't immediately try to heal her up. What I like about this scene is that it gives you, the player, a way to emphasize with Link, with what he's trying to save. That's what I think Zelda games tend to do very well when they are trying to tell a story. And after that, let's just say that this heart piece that you get by hitting Urka 500 times with your sword might be the most annoying heart piece to ever grace the Zelda series. You can dodge and parry, but then he'll decide, yeah, you're not parrying now even if you want to. So you meet Joblin, and he just gives you Nero's Pearl. No dungeon, no challenge, no nothing. This is one of my primary complaints about the Wind Waker. Basically, each Zelda game has what I consider to be an opening act consisting of 3 dungeons before you get to the main portion. Wind Waker only has 2. You see, an extra dungeon was cut for time. This is why Nintendo doesn't like to keep deadlines. From there, you have to set the pearls on some islands. Before that, though, I decided to explore. You get the obligatory song that can change the time of day, which is needed in a 3D Zelda game, when certain subplots are only available at night. Such as this auction minigame where Link will bid his hard-earned money for prizes. I wasn't aware that was legal at his age. Then there's the side quest of helping these 2 people find love on Windfall. That's nice. These side quests aren't as memorable as they were in Majora's Mask, but they are there. Time to put the pearls on the statues, and nothing seems to happen. Link must have superhuman durability to be able to survive that kind of blast. Also, King of Red Lions, you clearly don't need a sail, since you got here just fine. You hustled me, man. The Tower of Gods dungeon is unique, because you actually have to use the King of Red Lions to traverse the dungeon, at least on the outer path. Inside, you get access to the bow and arrow. About time that item made its way into the game. The only parts I find annoying is when you have to use the blocks to make sure you can get across without letting the water quench your flame. You also learn the command melody, which allows Link to control these statues. Basically, Link hypnotizes them and they follow his command. Of course, they are easy to have fall into pits, but they respawn, so no harm, no foul. The main goal is to get them into the central chamber, which then leads you to the top, climbing up these long stairs outside and then finally confronting the boss. Yeah, this is one final test from the gods for the new hero. It reminds me a lot of Andros from Star Fox 64. What's nice is that when you run low on ammo, the boss will give you the arrows if you lose them. Which makes a lot of sense. Because the gods want Link to win. But with another boss down, it's time to open the pathway. There's a certain sense of build-up while you ring the bell. Then you sail into the gold ring, and I present to you the moment where Zelda's timeline became irrevocably screwed up. Yep, Hyrule was sunk beneath the waves of the Great Sea. Why has this happened? Well, that's a question for later. I thought to myself, wait, if Hyrule is sunk beneath the waves, how do you explain games like A Link to the Past and so on and so forth? Well, Nintendo answered that question eventually. Inside, you find enemies frozen in time and a statue of the Hero of Time. There's a certain eerie feeling to it. After solving the rather easy puzzle, the statue moves, and down below is the resting place of the Master Sword. I must question how it got there considering it used to be in the Temple of Time, but whatever, it's not important. Taking the sword out of the pedestal restores color to the castle, and causes the creatures to come out of their frozen state. That's unfortunate. Before we go there, one little touch I loved was that the sages from Ocarina of Time and Ganon surround the Master Sword in murals. It's a nice nod to continuity. The Darknuts are an interesting enemy because they rely on using the parry maneuver to get them out of their armor, but I love the lore building going on in this scene. Obviously, Hyrule Castle was under heavy attack when the Great Flood happened. I would love to see Nintendo do a Zelda Tales type of animated series that fills in the gaps on what happened in some of these events, like expanding on the dying soldier in the Alley of Ocarina of Time. Something's off about the Master Sword. The game doesn't highlight that, but fans of previous Zelda games will probably notice that the blade looks dull, as if there's something off. Interesting. With that, there's nothing left to do than to go back to Forsaken Fortress. Last time you had to sneak in, but this time you're prepared. You blast your way in and find Phantom Ganon waiting for you. Looking a little different than the last time we saw him, but the strategy is much the same. Reflect his attacks back at him. Once that's done, he leaves behind the Skull Hammer. It serves the same purpose as the Megaton Hammer, mainly to get rid of these spikes. Of course, it's going to come into play later. This time on your second visit, you don't have to sneak around. You can finally pay them back for all that trouble you had to go through. Link finally reaches the top where his sister is being held. Of course, he's a bit more cautious this time as he slowly makes his way in. He can't quite open the door, but Cetra appears and pretty much lays into him for acting before thinking. She frees the girls but notices the sword on Link's back and takes an interest in it, which obviously hints at something. But there's still one more thing our hero has to do. Yep, time for the boss battle against the thing that took your sister. The boss starts with a nice climb as water floods the chamber. Maybe intentional foreshadowing for the final battle. Then you get to the top and find the Helmara King won't go down so easy. The trick is to wait for him to slam his beak into the ground and then pound him with a hammer. But it's so good to pay this thing back for all the hell he put Link through at the beginning of the game. With the Helmara King down, it's time to finally confront Ganondorf. The scene plays out with tension and dread as Ganondorf's first words to Link are very interesting. He clearly recognizes his old nemesis. The scene has such a good Superman vibe to it, and the plot revelations are well done, and Ganondorf is really portrayed as a threat of menace when he reveals the true reason why the Master Sword is dull. The blade is dull. It acted as a seal to Ganondorf's power, and now that it's been unsheathed, Ganondorf has reclaimed his power. So yeah, that was all the plot revelations. I just love the scene where Valoo blows up Ganondorf's fortress. It's just so cool. The King of Red Lions returns Link and Tetra to Hyrule, where a voice asks Link to come meet him in the Master Sword Chamber. This is also the only part where you can take a picture of Tetra. Inside the Master Sword Chamber, you find an old man waiting there. He is the King of Hyrule, and he finally expands on why Hyrule is frozen in time. The people fled to the mountaintop while the goddesses flooded Hyrule. But the real twist is when the king talks to Tetra. I guess putting the Triforce of Wisdom back together got rid of the tan she accumulated over the years. Okay then. She seems to lose a bit of her spunk when she becomes Zelda, but to be fair, she's accumulated by guilt. And thus begins the second half of the game, the real meat. Link must travel to the two temples and restore power to the Master Sword, while also finding the lost pieces of the Triforce of Courage. You see, when Link went back in time at the end of Ocarina of Time, the Triforce splintered into pieces. Despite Twilight Princess later showing a complete opposite effect in the child timeline, but, you know, time travel shenanigans, the rules are whatever the writers want them to be. But before we move on to that, let's cover the ability to warp, which finally comes after you get the bow and arrow. Every game like this needs a warping system, and this style works great for this world. This is also how you access the fire and ice arrow. The small fairy queen just gives them to you. How nice and easy. Before we cover the temples, Windfall Island has changed. The two fathers who were poor and rich have now switched places, and so have their daughters, Mila and Maggie. The two girls who were with Ariel in the Forsaken Fortress. Maggie's father exposes his true colors by showing what a rich snob he is. But Mila's father learns to realize that there's more to life than just money. Maggie is depressed because she fell in love with a moblin back in Forsaken Fortress.
You know what I don't understand, Chuck? I don't understand love. Who does?
Of course, helping her out reveals that the moblin wants to eat her, and she seems totally cool with that.
You not only can't explain love, actually, you can't even talk about it.
Let's hope the next one goes better. Link stops Mila from robbing the store she works at and convinces her to go straight and narrow. That's, better. You see, I like little touches like this because it shows the world is changing because of Link, even if it's in small ways. So finally we go to the Earth Temple after getting the Power Bracelet, the top of where we find the spirit of the Zora Sage, Loruto. You just took Ruto's name and added La to it. How original. She tells Link that he must find the next Sage of Earth. Why are the Zora, who are fish people, guardians of the Earth Temple again? Once again, how the hell did the Zora evolve into Ritos? You'd think with the ocean, they would have thrived. So going back to Medley and playing the song to awaken her is a very somber scene. Like they're giving something up by becoming sages. There's always a sense of sacrifice to this as shown in Ocarina of Time. So it's off to the Earth Temple and Link and Medley share a tune. So the two Sage Temples have a unique idea. Link and a buddy have to solve the temple together. It's an interesting concept and not one the series has done before in a 3D game. The purpose Medley serves in this dungeon is that she can be used to reflect beams of light, and she can be used to fly across a cavern. Taking control of Medley using the command function is an interesting idea. Obviously nowadays there would probably be a co-op feature. Let's test this out. Let's fly, Medley. Believe that you can fly! Well, your sacrifice was noble. I salute you! Anyway, this dungeon brings back Floor Masters, and if Medley gets caught, she gets stuck in a cage and you have to let her down. Even though she probably could have done that herself, but whatever. Link gets the mirror shield in this dungeon and it serves the same purpose. I guess they felt 3D Zeldas absolutely had to have the mirror shield at the time. The dungeon is much longer than the previous two. It took me over an hour to beat. The mini-boss introduces the Stalfos and they're a little different because they fall apart and you must attack the head to destroy it. A bit of a different take on it. But this temple introduces you to the Pos, and this time you have to shine light on them to destroy them. A bit of an annoying feature. I do enjoy Link and Medley working together. It really adds to the sense of comradeship. The boss is a giant Po because, of course it is. The annoying part is that it splits into smaller Pos that you have to kill. But, whatever the case, it's not particularly difficult, and down another boss. And the Master Sword is partially restored. Yeah, the hilt's open, but the color is still gone. Medley has to stay and pray, but Link can return. Fortunately, they do show the sage's whereabouts in the ending. So now it's on to the Wind Temple. The Wind Temple requires the iron boots to get on, and here they are the push of a button, which is what they should have been on the Nintendo 64 games. Rinse and repeat, the Wind Sage Fido wants you to find the new Wind Sage and its maker because who else would it be? So, rinse and repeat, Sage opening, open the pathway, and on we go. And unfortunately, I find the Wind Temple to be the most annoying temple in the whole game. Also, one thing I thought was weird when searching for the Tingle statues, yeah, the original game had a Game Boy Advance connectivity thing going that would allow you to find Tingle's partner, Knuckle. Couldn't be done here, so they just did this. I was standing where the chest would materialize, so Link ended up just going right on top of it. Makar is not as good to control as Medley. His main job is to plant seeds so that they can grow into trees so Link can use the hookshot, which he gets in this dungeon. Mostly this dungeon is about using the wind to your advantage, fighting the Fire Wizrobe, yeah, take a picture of him here, changing floors, using the iron boots to bring down heavy structures, switching back and forth between Link and Makar, the works. Changing floors is so repetitive and so easy to lose track of where you're going. Yeah, as you can tell, I kinda just want to get through this dungeon as quickly as possible as I don't find it very interesting. It's just a bunch of wind puzzles that I could do without. The boss is a giant sandworm that's a bit annoying to fight. It's the typical use the hook shot to expose its weak point, like in A Link to the Past. I don't have much to say, it's just a standard get back here boss, but finally at long last, the Master Sword is restored. Rather easily, I must say. Apparently there was supposed to be an additional dungeon that was cut for time. Wind Waker is an example of why Nintendo takes their time with Zelda games from now on. After that comes the Triforce Hunt, and in the GameCube release, this was easily the most tedious part of the whole game. You had to find the Triforce charts, which meant sailing back and forth, changing the wind to where you had to go back to Tingle, pay an absurd amount of rupees to translate, go get the Triforce piece, rinse and repeat 8 times. It just halted the progression of the endgame. It was padding at its absolute finest. The HD version improves upon this with the Super Sale, and that you only have to do that for 3 of the 8 pieces. But still, I must again say these really should have been in dungeons for you to complete. That would have helped the game's sporadic dungeon count. You have to be able to do this to go back to Hyrule, even though I was able to go there before, so why do I have to do this now? Whatever the case, back at the Tower of the Gods, Link presents the Triforce of Courage to the gods, but finds that it has gone back on the back of his hand, and that he has earned the title the Hero of Winds. That's the amazing thing about this Link. Unlike the Hero of Time, this Link wasn't born to fill that role. He had to earn it. Though you could argue that the Hero of Time had to earn his role too, so maybe I'm wrong. But the time has come to go back to Hyrule and rescue Zelda. The first signs are not good. The Hero of Time statue is destroyed. A hero's legacy, defiled like that, makes you really hate Ganondorf. You arrive, but it's too late. Ganondorf has taken Zelda, leaving you with some Dark Notes to fight. It's nothing special, they just have capes. But you can finally get across the barrier in Hyrule Castle, letting you explore a little bit of Hyrule at last. It's so desolate and empty, which is the point. Now for Ganon's Tower. The first part is nothing special, just fight the 4 bosses again. then play an interesting puzzle game with Phantom Ganon, follow the hilt of the sword to the door,
which finally culminates in one final battle with Phantom Ganon.
From there on, it's up these stairs to where Ganondorf is waiting with Zelda. What's interesting about this scene is that Ganondorf actually speaks to Link about things other than conquest, and he actually voices his anger about what the gods had done to Hyrule to stop him. Ganondorf in Ocarina of Time was a man becoming a monster, but this is more of a take of a man. We'll get back to him in a minute when I elaborate. Puppet Ganon takes 3 forms, and this is probably the only boss that I found difficulty with on my first playthrough. It's classic Ganon, but on a puppet string. The goal is to hit the core with the light arrow. Once that's done, he switches to a spider form, which means having the time where it lands. The snake form is the most annoying part, because it's so hard to hit with the light arrow. But the boss will go down, and Ganondorf again compliments the boy.
I remember, back in the day when this game first came out, on a forum that I used to visit,
somebody posted the opinion that Ganondorf was Link's father figure in this game, comparing them to Spider-Man and the Green Goblin. The original Spider-Man film had just come out fairly recently at the time that this game was released. How the Green Goblin was Spider-Man's father figure, but Peter rejected Norman's ways, much like Link does to Ganon here. I don't quite see it that way, but it's an interesting thought. He clearly recognizes this boy as the hero of Time Reborn. Before we do that, let's complete the Nintendo gallery. So I did it. Every picture is done. Carl disappears, but leaves behind a figurine of Link on the King of Red Lions. That's the reward, eh? Nintendo's done way worse, to be honest. Breath of the Wild. So finally up to the tower where Ganondorf waits for Link. But instead, he just talks about all that's happened to him. How his homeland was ravaged by harsh winds. But yet with Hyrule there was a different wind. One that brought life. This really humanizes him, showing a twinge of regret for what his life choices have led to. But he simply feels that he can go no further back. He must do this. And now, at long last, his dreams are upon him. He can finally finish what he started all those years ago. He makes his wish to the heavens.
It's all finally led to this moment.
But he finds something that he didn't expect. Yeah, that's why you make your wish after you touch the wish-granting thing. The king's wish is different. He wants Hyrule to be washed away, and for Link and Zelda to have hope. Ganondorf can only laugh. His dreams are undone, but what is there left to lose? Link and Zelda can finally go home to the world above, but one thing stands in their way. Ganondorf is now just a rabid dog that has to be put down. Let's just say this. I love this final battle. Link and Zelda actually working together to fight Ganondorf, the atmosphere with the waves crashing down, it all makes for a phenomenal set.
What I love about this fight is that it's a straight-on sword duel.
The music is simply incredible. The use of Zelda's arrows and Link dodging, it all comes into play here.
He does take a moment to knock Zelda out instead of killing her for whatever reason, but she does get up eventually.
But now Ganondorf will avoid every attack. It's not the number of blows that determines this fight, it's largely scripted. I think the use of Zelda and Link's combination is clever.
His final words are a man not cursing his enemies like an ocarina of time,
but of a solemn acceptance. The king tells Link and Zelda that he has lived bound to Hyrule, exactly as Ganondorf. The theme is here, we can't live in the past, or change it. We can only learn from it, and we use those experiences to form a better future. That land Link and Zelda will find will not be Hyrule, but their land. Except they'll call it Hyrule anyway due to branding purposes. Link and Zelda float to the top, but the king refuses to go with him. After all, there's no place for him there. A relic of the past and the new future they will forge. Link and Tetra awaken found by their friends, and so ends the Wind Waker. Let me say this, it's quite the adventure. I think it stood the test of time. If you're going to start playing Zelda, I don't think you should start here, but definitely play this if you're on a Zelda binge. I really love its story and characters. The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker is at the top of the list, and despite some shortcomings, it's a great game. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please hit that bell, like, and subscribe button. See you later.